So what if we said that the best answer to your question of what's the best use of these tools to create more time so that we can pursue purpose? What is our purpose? To know and love God and man in his image. Wow, that would change everything.
Don't be afraid of the dark. Be careful with stars. Not every light is gonna guide you, baby. Not every light is gonna guide you.
So, Dr. Kathy, today on the Celebrate Kids podcast, in this daily segment, Face in the Dark, I want to look at something that we're finding inside of social media. Social media use early in adolescence really does lower cognitive performance. That's something that a new study that's been published from the American Medical Association and from the Journal of American Medical Association, JAMA, really published recently. Actually, it was published last week. It found that 9 to 13-year-olds who have a rising level of social media exposure performed lower on their reading, memory, and vocabulary tests compared to their peers who used little to no social media. The findings come as hundreds of school districts are now suing major social media companies, claiming that their products are eroding students' mental health and their ability to learn. And this is forcing some schools to devote significant resources to managing the academic and behavioral fallout. This, as scientists are also finding that there are known markers for Alzheimer's that are now appearing in some young adults who have used digital tools, especially AI engines, as they've been learning. Now, Dr. Kathy, we use these tools, these social media tools a lot. There are natural trade-offs that have been in existence forever related to using tools. I think there's a positive way to look at this. Our friend Dr. Glenn Sunshine over at the Colson Center highlights that when the church, and I would say specifically monks, used the water wheel and iron, they actually found that they had more time. There was a trade-off. Using these tools gave them more time, and they pursued God and prayer in that time. And it really drove them to a deeper understanding and love of God, and actually drove them to retain a lot of and celebrate a lot of theology and give us a lot of books of antiquity. But right now we're seeing an adverse reaction to using tools. We're really captivated by these tools, and we're driven rather than more into life. We're finding ourselves that we have more time on our hands, and it actually drives us deeper into different tools and some bad things that we're finding happening inside of social media. So looking at this, these tools, though, are right here. They're not going away. Cell phones are here, computers are here, and our kids are going to have access to them. We know that there's a trade-off. There can be a positive trade-off or there can be a negative trade-off. How do we best use these technical tools, specifically even things like social media, knowing that the trade-off has been really detrimental for our kids? It's driven them to intense depression, anxiety, but we're also finding that it's driving them to have some early onset Alzheimer markers inside of their brains because directly linked to these use of these tools. What's the best way that we guide our kids to use technology and these tools right now?
Very carefully, right? Like, good heavens, that's a scary reality, Wayne, about the early onset Alzheimer's. Seriously, there are so many reasons for us to take a break and for us to have digital Sabbaths of every Wednesday and Sunday, and the policy that I kind of set, and well, not a policy, a suggestion I make, and that kids tend to appreciate is that you're only allowed to turn it on if you need it to read with and cook with. So that would be ovens and stoves and, you know, waffle makers and toasters and a light that you read by, and everything else stays off for a period of time. And we train our kids and we train each other to understand that we can live through those kinds of things. I like that they're called tools. One of my biggest concerns I've had with the phone is that kids treat it as a toy. That's why it's difficult for them to take the Bible seriously on their phone or their iPad, because it is used so often as their toy. So what if we did use it more as a tool, as a research assistant, where the family uses it together, where you're going to take a fall break and you want to go to a state park for a Saturday and you're going to drive 2 hours or less, and you send your 13-year-old to the device with the 9-year-old and with, dad hovering, and you do some research and figure out, hey, dad, let's go to this park. It says it's in peak season for the color, and it looks like there's some bridges and waterfalls, and we haven't been to that one ever or in a long time. So what if we did it as a family? What if we played games on a device as a family? If we needed to game, again, it's up to the family. Yeah, so carefully, um, what's really interesting about the Glenn Sunshine story? Like, is that compelling, Wayne? that these monks had more time, and what did they do with it? They pursued more of God. So what if we said that the best answer to your question of what's the best use of these tools to create more time so that we can pursue purpose? And what is our purpose? To know and love God and man in his image. Wow, that would change everything.
It reminds me of something that I read in Joseph LeConte's book, A Hobbit, A Wardrobe, and the Great War. He kind of alludes to C.S. Lewis stepping back from machines a lot, partly because Lewis really saw the detriment that machines were having inside of their culture when he was in World War One. He saw that basically man was devoted to machines, to finding new ways and faster ways to destroy humanity, to kill people and to wreck cultures and societies. And he saw this destruction and really changed his whole lifestyle. And it drove him to write books about bravery and courage and even I would say possibly the most important value that many of us could celebrate, and that's to build relationships. Relationships are hard though, Dr. Kathy, and sometimes I think we look at machines and we want them to elevate or celebrate or kind of expedite some of this. I like Lewis's posture here and what you're talking about, taking a digital Sabbath and doing these things. It makes me want to really take that digital Sabbath and, like you said, take that time and push it more into relationships, to, seeking to heal broken relationships that are there, to be somebody that redeems and restores them. And then on the same point, to build new relationships. But I also want to ask you, and I wonder this, is there a problem in our belonging when relationships really are put into this sense of we have technologies for that, we have techniques for that? Relationships should be comfortable and easy. What does that do to our belonging when our belonging actually is probably more tied to efficiency? We feel more like we belong to the technology or the technique or the tool or the machine, like Lewis kind of engaged, and we have a hard time putting it down. What would you say to that? And how should we guide and encourage our kids knowing that that's probably really prevalent right now?
Yeah, one of the biggest problems probably with relationships and the ease of technology is the delete a friend mentality, the cut and run, where, prior to technology, if we wanted a relationship to last, we had to be willing to forgive and ask to be forgiven and look past someone's faults and understand and not take everything personally. We would rearrange schedules. We would choose to go watch somebody play a baseball game because it was their love and we wanted to love them well. And now, oh, it's too cold, it's too hot, I don't have time, and it's just so much easier to I'll just FaceTime with them later to see how the game went. So there's an efficiency that, I can understand. Like you and I are busy and there are benefits sometimes of connecting, over um, platforms, not opposed to that. But yeah, if kids think that it's all about them, it all should be easy, then they don't stay the course. And again, I look at things like marriage. Like, if they're deleting a friend now because they were offended by something, why are we so quickly offended? Like, that's a whole nother podcast episode.
Mhm.
We tend to take things, very personally and are offended quickly. And then if we haven't had forgiveness modeled for us, we don't understand that that's real. That requires humility. Technology has created a lot of prideful, self-centered people. Like, there's all kinds of reasons that this is really hard. But for us to understand relationships are complex because people are complex. And like, what have we been saying lately? People are messy and the culture's chaotic. Those are true statements. And yet we love in the middle of the mess, right? Easier for some people to do that than others. But wow, if it's too easy and too comfortable, you know what? That's a laziness. I think if friendship or belonging is too easy for someone, it might be because they've only related to people exactly like them. They want the yes man, if you will, in the corner. They're not willing to be challenged in any way, shape, or form, and that can be a problem. So it's worth thinking about.
I love that. I want to ask you as we kind of close here, what is the link between social media and brain performance? And is there a link then also with reading vocabulary and memory? How do these social media apps actually impact the brain like this? Because I think a lot of us as parents, we've been taught that, these apps, especially the educational ones, are really good for our kids to engage in. Do we need to hit pause on that? What are your thoughts there on this?
One of the main effects that I believe social media and technology is having on kids' learning is simply that they're spending less time reading. The best predictor of school success will always be learning vocabulary, the words that children understand when they hear them. And a learning vocabulary is grown mostly by reading to children and having conversations with children. And this is happening less and less because parents are busy. Many parents are working two jobs, or they're working a job and then they're serving in community, or they're overwhelmed and exhausted by the culture's challenges, and they're just not engaging. I mean, there's many reasons. And then kids would rather scroll social media, be watching their social media platforms and gaming and hanging out. And so it's hard. They're not reading, they're not practicing their math, they're not looking at maps, they're not engaging in culture in a lot of productive ways. And that is a major reason that the academics are going down.
Dr. Kathy and I were talking today. It reminded me of a passage that comes out of Luke chapter 10, and I'll begin reading at verse 38. But Martha was distracted by all the preparations that had to be made. She came to him and asked, "Lord, don't you care that my sister has left me to do all the work by myself? Tell her to help me." "Martha, Martha," the Lord answered, "you are worried and upset about many things, but few things are needed, or indeed only one. Mary has chosen what is better." This passage here that is recounted by the Apostle Luke, it really highlights the fact that hospitality is important, and especially in the ancient world, it was deeply valued. Martha wasn't doing anything quote unquote wrong. She was really busy serving Jesus. Yet Jesus pointed out that her distraction was keeping her from a deeper relationship. The word distracted here in Greek, presapedo, really means to be pulled back mentally. Martha's mind was fragmented. And this is a vivid description of what social media often does for us. It divides our attention. It replaces reflection with reaction. Mary's choice to sit and listen and be fully present, it reminds us that attention actually is worship. And I think that could be helpful for our kids to understand that worship is things that are worthy of being thought of. And so we can help our kids to think through what do devices do? Do they help us do a lot more, but not really be present? I think we might need to actually step into some different Mary moments as a family, to take even short times to sit quietly and read and maybe pray, maybe even just to strike up a conversation, albeit it might feel insignificant with our kids, to ask them how they're doing that day, or what book they've been reading, or what do they notice outside. Those little moments can be really big moments for our kids. It can teach our kids and even shape their brain to focus on things that really do matter, not just efficiency or doing things better, but to focus on things that do make us wiser. Things like God's word, things like books. If we focus on endless scrolling, I think we often grow restless. And I think that is a dark place for our kids to be. But giving them hope and a bright light of taking time to pause, and as Dr. Kathy talked about today, to take actually a technology Sabbath, that could be really bright lights that give our kids ability to see clearly in the moment that they're in. I hope that's an encouragement for you, and I hope this podcast that we do here at Celebrate Kids is an encouragement for you, especially this daily segment, Facing the Dark. On behalf of Dr. Kathy Cook, my name is Wayne Stender. So thankful you joined us today, and we're looking forward to seeing you here again tomorrow.